The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I fumbled with the key to our apartment door in the heart of Brooklyn. My heart was still racing from the long day at the marketing firm, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw the moment I stepped inside. There was Roman, my partner of 3 years, his arms wrapped tightly around another man, a guy from his art studio I recognized vaguely as Alex. Their lips were pressed together in a kiss that wasn't just friendly, it was intimate, passionate, the kind Roman used to reserve only for me. My bag slipped from my shoulder and hit the floor with a thud, and both men jumped apart, guilt flashing across Roman's face like a lightning bolt. "Lincoln, it's not what it looks like," Roman stammered, his voice cracking as he took a step toward me. But it was exactly what it looked like. The man who had promised me forever, who had whispered sweet nothings about building a life together away from the judgmental eyes of my conservative family back in Ohio, was betraying me in our own home. The air felt thick, suffocating, and I could barely breathe as the reality sank in. How had we gotten here? The man I loved, the one who made me believe that two men could have a normal, happy life in this chaotic city, had just shattered everything with one careless moment. I stood frozen, my mind reeling with fragments of memories that now felt like lies. Roman's dark hair was tousled the way I used to run my fingers through it after long nights talking about our future. His tattooed arms, the ones that had held me through my worst days at work, now hung limp at his sides. Alex muttered something about leaving and slipped past me, his eyes downcast, but I barely registered him. All I could see was Roman, the artist who had swept into my life at that gallery opening 3 years ago, promising the world. "What are you doing here so early?" Roman asked, trying to sound casual, but his hands were shaking. "I was supposed to have the place to myself tonight." His words landed like a slap. So this was planned. Not a random slip, but something he had arranged while I was grinding through meetings pretending everything was fine. I felt the heat rise in my chest, a mix of rage and nausea that made my knees weak. "You promised me, Roman. You stood right there in this kitchen last month and said no more secrets, no more hiding. We were going to tell my parents together. We were going to make this real." He reached for me, but I stepped back, my back hitting the doorframe. "Lincoln, please let me explain. It was just a moment of weakness. Alex and I have been working late on that mural project and things got complicated. But it doesn't mean anything. I love you." Those words, the same ones he had used to pull me out of my shell when I first admitted I was scared of being out in New York, now rang hollow. Love? This wasn't love. This was the slow erosion of everything I had built, my trust, my identity, my hope that two men like us could defy the odds. I grabbed my keys again, my vision blurring with unshed tears. "Don't follow me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need air." The door slammed behind me and the cool evening breeze of Brooklyn hit my face like a wake-up call. Streets filled with couples laughing under string lights blurred past as I walked aimlessly toward the waterfront. How many times had Roman and I done this same walk, hand in hand, talking about adopting a dog or buying a house upstate? Those dreams now felt like smoke. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it, knowing it was him. Instead, I called my best friend, Jake, the only straight guy who had stuck by me through every coming-out panic. Jake answered on the second ring, his voice warm and steady. "Lincoln, you sound like hell. What happened?" I sank onto a bench overlooking the East River, the city lights reflecting on the water like scattered promises. I caught him, Jake. Roman with another guy in our apartment. The words tumbled out raw and unfiltered. Jake listened without interrupting his silence, a small comfort in the storm. "Man, that's brutal. You want me to come over? We can grab a beer and figure this out." But I knew figuring it out wasn't that simple. This wasn't just a fight. This was the end of the trust one had placed in the one person who made me feel seen as a gay man in a world that still whispered doubts. As the night deepened, memories flooded back unbidden, pulling me 3 years into the past. I had been 27, fresh from Ohio, working my first big campaign at the firm when a friend dragged me to an opening at a small gallery in Soho. The place was packed with artists and hipsters, but Roman stood out, immediately sketching in the corner, his laugh cutting through the chatter. He caught me staring and smiled, that crooked grin that would later become my favorite sight. "Hey, you look like you could use a drink," he said, handing me a plastic cup of cheap wine. We talked for hours about everything from bad coffee to the pressure of family expectations. He was 30 then, already making waves with his murals, but carrying his own scars from a conservative upbringing in California. That night turned into coffee, the next day then dinner, and before I knew it we were inseparable. Roman was the first person who made being gay feel like a strength, not a secret. He introduced me to his circle of queer artists who threw parties where no one hid. For the first time, I posted a photo of us on social media without cropping him out. My parents back home were polite on calls, but I could hear the hesitation in Mom's voice. "Lincoln, honey, are you sure this is the life you want?" Dad avoided the topic altogether. Roman squeezed my hand during those calls, promising we'll win them over together. I believed him because he made the future look possible. Now sitting by the river with the city humming around me, that belief cracked wide open. The betrayal wasn't just the kiss. It was the way he had looked me in the eye for months, swearing fidelity while hiding whatever this was with Alex. My chest tightened with the weight of it, all the years of navigating prejudice at work, where I downplayed my relationship to avoid awkward meetings, the quiet fear that being out would stall my career. Roman had been my anchor through all that. Without him, who was I? A 30-year-old gay man still proving he deserved love. The thought sent fresh tears stinging my eyes, but I wiped them away, refusing to break here in public. I had to decide what came next, not just for us but for me. The walk home felt endless, but by the time I reached the apartment door, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, the apartment felt like a stranger's place. Sunlight streamed through the windows we had picked out together, highlighting the coffee mugs Roman had painted with our initials. I hadn't slept. Instead, I had paced the living room, replaying every promise he had made. Roman sat at the kitchen table, his eyes red-rimmed, a half-empty mug in front of him. "Lincoln, we need to talk. Please." His voice was hoarse, but I kept my distance, arms crossed like a shield. "Talk then. Explain how you could throw away 3 years for a guy you barely mentioned." He ran a hand through his hair, the same gesture that used to make my heart skip. "It started innocently," he said. "Alex needed help with a deadline and we stayed late. One thing led to another. I swear it was the first time. I didn't plan it, but the excuses sounded rehearsed. I thought about the late nights he had come home smelling of paint and something else I couldn't place. The text messages he deleted quickly. How blind had I been? "You promised no secrets," I reminded him, my voice rising. "We were supposed to drive to Ohio next month for my sister's wedding. You said you'd stand beside me when I finally told them the full truth about us. Now what? I show up alone and pretend everything's fine?" Roman stood his chair, scraping the floor. "I still want that, Lincoln. This doesn't change how I feel about you. It was a stupid mistake. I love you more than anything." The words hung between us, heavy with the weight of what they used to mean. I wanted to believe him. Part of me ached to cross the room and let him pull me into one of those hugs that made the world disappear. But the image of him with Alex was burned behind my eyelids. Love without trust was just a pretty lie, and I had spent too many years hiding who I was to settle for that now. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet, throwing in clothes and my laptop. "I'm staying at Jake's for a few days. I need space." Roman's face crumpled. "Don't do this. We can fix it. Therapy, whatever it takes." But I zipped the bag shut, the sound final. Fixing it meant facing why he had strayed, and I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not when my own doubts were screaming louder than his pleas. As I left the building, the doorman gave me a sympathetic nod. Everyone in the neighborhood knew us as the couple who walked their rescue dog every morning. Now that dog was with Roman, and I was the one walking away. Jake's place in Queens was a welcome refuge. He didn't ask questions when I showed up at his door, just handed me a beer and let me crash on the couch. Over the next days, the flashbacks kept coming uninvited, filling the silence. I remembered our first real date at a little Italian place in the village. Roman had ordered for both of us, laughing when I admitted I had never tried escargot. We talked for hours about our dreams. He wanted to open his own gallery one day, a space where queer artists could exhibit without fear. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder far enough that my sexuality wouldn't matter. That night, under the streetlights, he kissed me softly and said, "Lincoln, you're the first person who makes me want to build something lasting." I believed every word. Those early months were magic. We moved in together after 6 months, pooling our savings for the Brooklyn apartment. Roman painted a mural on our bedroom wall, a swirling abstract of 2 figures intertwined under a city skyline. Every morning I'd wake to the smell of coffee and his sleepy smile. We faced small storms together, like the time my boss made a vague comment about team dynamics after seeing us at the company picnic. Roman had held my hand through the anxiety, reminding me we were stronger than the whispers. He even flew to Ohio with me for Thanksgiving that first year, charming my parents with stories of his art. Mom had pulled me aside later, saying, "He seems nice, dear, but are you sure this is permanent?" I had nodded fiercely because with Roman it felt permanent. Now those memories tasted bitter. Jake listened as I poured them out one evening, his face serious. "Sounds like Roman had his own stuff going on, man. But you can't keep punishing yourself for trusting him. You're allowed to be angry." I nodded, but inside the anger mixed with grief. What hurt most wasn't just the kiss. It was the realization that Roman had seen my vulnerabilities, my fear of rejection from family and society, and still chosen to risk it all. As a gay man, I had already fought so hard to claim my place. Losing him felt like losing part of that hard-won identity. By the end of the week, I returned to work on autopilot, smiling through meetings while my mind wandered. Colleagues noticed something was off, but I brushed it off with excuses about a cold. In the bathroom mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back, hollow-eyed and unsure. Roman texted everyday apologies and pleas, but I left them unread. The space was helping me see the cracks. I had ignored the way he sometimes pulled away when conversations turned serious about commitment, the subtle ways he kept parts of himself hidden. Maybe the betrayal had been building longer than one night with Alex. That thought terrified me because it meant I had been blind, not just unlucky. One evening, Jake dragged me to a quiet bar near his place. The dim lights and low music felt safe. "You know what I think?" he said over his drink. "This sucks, but it's also a chance to figure out who Lincoln is without Roman. You've spent 3 years building your life around him. Maybe it's time to build it around you." His words landed softly, but they echoed through the night. As I walked back to his couch later, I realized he was right. The pain was raw, but beneath it something new was stirring, a quiet determination to stop hiding pieces of myself, even from me. The journey ahead looked lonely, but for the first time in days it also looked possible. The weekend brought an unexpected call from Mom. Her voice on the phone was bright at first, asking about work and the weather in New York. Then she paused. "Honey, your sister mentioned you might bring Roman to the wedding. Is everything okay?" I swallowed hard, gripping the phone tighter. The truth hovered on my tongue, but old habits of protecting her from the full weight of my life made me hesitate. "We're having some issues, Mom. I might come alone." Silence stretched, then she sighed, the sound heavy with years of unspoken worry. "I always knew this lifestyle would be hard, Lincoln. People aren't as accepting as you think, even up here. If you need to come home for a bit, the guest room is ready." Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they echoed the doubts I had buried. My family had never been outright hostile, but their careful politeness around my sexuality had always felt like a wall. Dad changed the subject whenever I mentioned Roman. My sister tried to be supportive, sending cards on anniversaries, but I could sense her relief when I kept details vague. Roman had been the one who encouraged me to push back. "Remember, you're not asking for permission, you're living your truth," he would say. Now that truth felt fractured, and I wondered if Mom was right, if the path I chose had always been lined with landmines. I booked a flight home for the following weekend, needing the distance from Brooklyn and Roman's constant messages. The plane ride gave me hours to replay our arguments the night before I left. He had shown up at Jake's with flowers and a letter pouring out his regrets. I read it in the hallway, tears blurring the words. He admitted the affair had started as flirtation during late studio sessions, but claimed it was over. He blamed stress from his upcoming gallery show and his fear that I was pulling away because of work. It was all excuses wrapped in love, and I couldn't accept them. When I handed the letter back, I saw the defeat in his eyes, but also something else, a flicker of the man I had fallen for. Still, I closed the door. Ohio greeted me with familiar flat fields and the scent of autumn leaves. Mom hugged me tight at the airport, her eyes searching my face for cracks. "Your father is at the hardware store, but he'll be home for dinner." We drove in silence until she finally asked, "Is it over with Roman?" I nodded, staring out the window. I caught him with someone else. The confession hung in the car like smoke. Mom's hands tightened on the wheel. "Oh, Lincoln, I'm so sorry. People make mistakes, but that doesn't make it right. If he can't be faithful, maybe it's for the best." Her practicality surprised me. I had expected lectures about settling down with a woman instead. Instead, she listened as I described the betrayal, the promises, the way Roman had made me feel safe in my own skin for the first time. At home, Dad greeted me with a firm handshake, avoiding my eyes. Supper was quiet until Mom brought up the wedding. Your sister wants everyone there happy. If you need to talk to the pastor, she offered gently. I shook my head. This isn't about God, Dad. It's about trust. He set his fork down, finally meeting my gaze. Son, I've never understood this part of you, but I see how much it hurts. Just don't let it define you. The words were clumsy, but they were the closest he had come to acknowledging my reality. For the first time, I felt seen not as the gay son, but as their son who was hurting. The days blurred into family routines, helping with yard work and listening to my sister's wedding plans. Nights were harder. I lay in my childhood bed staring at the ceiling, replaying happy moments with Roman, our trip to the Grand Canyon where he proposed we get matching rings one day. He had knelt dramatically in the dust, making me laugh until tears came. Those rings were still in a drawer back in Brooklyn, symbols of a future now paused. I wondered if Roman was sleeping or pacing our apartment the way I used to when he was late. Part of me missed him fiercely, the way his laugh filled rooms, the way he knew exactly how I took my coffee. But missing him didn't erase the image of Alex's arms around him. A text from Roman arrived late one night. I know I don't deserve it, but can we talk when you get back? I miss you. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. I miss the man I thought you were. The reply came quickly. Then let me show you who I really am. Therapy starts next week if you'll come. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked to the old barn behind the house where I had hidden magazines as a teenager, dreaming of a life where I didn't have to hide. The betrayal had forced me to confront that scared kid again. Being gay wasn't the problem. Trusting the wrong person was. By the time I boarded the plane back to New York, I carried a new resolve. I would face Roman, but on my terms. The family visit had reminded me I wasn't alone, even if their acceptance was imperfect. The real work was learning to accept myself without needing Roman to complete the picture. Back in Brooklyn, the city felt both familiar and foreign. Jake picked me up at the airport, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. You look like you wrestled a bear and won. How was Ohio? Healing in a weird way, I admitted. Mom didn't freak out as much as I expected. He nodded. Families surprise you. So what's the plan with Roman? I shrugged, staring at the skyline. Confrontation. Boundaries, maybe closure. But deep down I knew closure was a myth. The betrayal had changed me, and whatever came next would be on new ground. The confrontation happened sooner than I expected. Roman was waiting outside my office, building the day I returned, his hands shoved in his jacket pockets, the autumn wind ruffling his hair. Lincoln, he said simply when I stepped out. Can we walk? I nodded, wary but curious. We headed toward Central Park, the same paths we had strolled countless times. The leaves were turning gold, mirroring the shift inside me. I told him about Ohio, the talks with my parents, the way their quiet support had cracked something open. He listened, his eyes never leaving my face. I'm glad you had that, he said softly. I wish I could have been there. We found a bench near the lake, and the words finally spilled. Why, Roman? Why risk everything we built? He stared at the water for a long moment. Because I was scared. Scared that the life we talked about, the rings, the house, the public coming out, would trap me. My last relationship ended because I couldn't commit, and I saw the same fear in your eyes sometimes. So I pushed you away before you could leave. It was stupid and selfish. Alex was easy, no expectations. But every time I was with him, I thought of you. The confession didn't excuse anything, but it humanized the pain. For the first time, I saw the cracks in Roman, too, the artist who painted grand dreams but struggled with the everyday weight of love between two men in a world that still judged. I told him about my own doubts, the nights I wondered if being gay meant I was destined for heartbreak. Work had been tense, a new manager making offhand comments about team bonding that felt pointed. I had skipped the company happy hour rather than explain why my +1 was complicated. Roman reached for my hand but stopped halfway. I get it now. I wasn't just cheating on you. I was cheating us both out of the chance to face this together. We sat in silence, watching joggers and families, the normalcy a stark contrast to our storm. I didn't forgive him, not yet, but I agreed to therapy. 1 session. No promises. The sessions started the following week in a small office near Union Square. The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis, asked us to describe our first meeting. Roman spoke first, his voice warm, recounting the gallery night. Lincoln looked lost and found at the same time. I wanted to be the one who helped him find his way. I added my side, the way his confidence had given me courage to post our first photo. Dr. Ellis nodded. Trust is built in those small moments but broken in the big ones. What does rebuilding look like for you both? The question hung heavy. For me, it looked like honesty even when it hurt. For Roman, it meant showing up consistently without the grand gestures that had masked his fears. Outside therapy, life continued in fragments. I threw myself into work, landing a promotion that required longer hours. Roman focused on his gallery show, pouring his regret into new pieces, vibrant abstracts that somehow captured our story. We didn't move back in together, but we met for coffee twice a week, talking about everything except the future. One evening, he showed me a painting he had done of two figures walking separate paths that eventually merged. "It's us," he said quietly. "Not perfect, but possible." I traced the lines, feeling the pull of old love but also the new strength in my own steps. Friendships shifted too. Jake became a steady presence, dragging me to basketball games and introducing me to his coworkers who treated me like any other guy. One night at a bar, a colleague from work spotted me and joined us. I waited for the awkwardness, but he just clapped my shoulder. "Heard you had a rough patch, man. Glad you're out here living." The casual acceptance surprised me. Maybe the world was changing, or maybe I was finally seeing it clearly without Roman as my shield. Still, nights alone brought waves of doubt. I missed the way Roman knew my silences, the way he made pancakes on Sundays. But missing wasn't the same as needing. I started journaling the emotions I had buried, the fear that betrayal proved I wasn't enough as a gay man. The pages filled, slowly revealing a truth I had avoided: I was enough on my own. A turning point came during a weekend hike upstate. Roman joined after I invited him tentatively. The trail was steep, the air crisp. Halfway up, he stopped, breathing hard. "Lincoln, I know I broke us, but I'm willing to earn back every piece. No more hiding, no more excuses." I looked at him, the sunlight catching his face, the same face I had loved fiercely. "I believe you want that," I said. "But I need time to trust myself first." We finished the hike in companionable silence, the distance between us smaller but still there. That night back in the city, I realized the betrayal had forced a growth I never asked for. I was no longer the man who needed Roman to validate my place in the world. I was becoming the man who claimed it for himself. The gallery opening for Roman's new show arrived like a test. The space was packed with critics and friends, the walls alive with color. I stood near the back, watching him charm the crowd, the same magnetic energy that had drawn me in years ago. When our eyes met across the room, he excused himself and walked over. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." I shrugged, sipping my wine. "I wanted to see what you created from all this." He led me to a private corner where a single canvas hung, a portrait of me standing alone on a Brooklyn rooftop, the city sprawling behind me. The title read, "Rebuilding." "It's how I see you now," he said softly. "Stronger without me, but maybe with me too if you'll let it happen." The painting hit hard. It captured the loneliness I had felt, but also the quiet power in my stance. For weeks we had navigated therapy and tentative dates, the kind where we held hands without rushing. Roman had come out more publicly, tagging me in posts and attending pride events as a couple again. My family had even video called during one session, Mom asking Roman how he was doing. Small steps, but each one rebuilt a fragile bridge. Still, the old wound throbbed on bad days. A text from Alex apologizing had reopened it briefly, but Roman deleted the number and showed me the message. "No more secrets," he promised. Work threw another curveball when the new manager pulled me aside. "Lincoln, your personal life seems stable now, but the team needs focus." I stared at him, realizing the comment was about my time off during the breakup. "I'm fully committed," I replied steadily. "And my personal life is exactly that, personal." He backed off, but the exchange reminded me how much I had dimmed my light to fit in. That evening I told Roman about it over dinner. He listened, then squeezed my hand. "You've carried enough alone. Let me carry some now." The words felt different this time, honest, without the desperate edge of earlier apologies. We spent the weekend at a cabin upstate, the same place we had hiked. Fireside talks stretched late. Roman opened up about his childhood, the father who never accepted his art or his sexuality, the fear that commitment meant repeating old patterns. I shared my own buried shame, the teenage years of praying it would pass. The honesty stripped away layers we had hidden even from each other. One morning, as mist rose from the lake, he turned to me. "Lincoln, I don't expect you to forget, but I hope you can forgive. Not for me, for us." I looked at the man who had broken me and seen the one who was trying to heal alongside me. Forgiveness wasn't instant, but it started there in the quiet agreement to keep choosing each other despite the scars. Back in the city, life settled into a new rhythm. I introduced Roman to more of my colleagues at a work event, no longer hiding our connection. The acceptance I received surprised me, colleagues asking about his art, genuinely interested. Jake teased me over drinks. "Look at you all grown up." Roman's gallery sold out, and he used the proceeds to fund a scholarship for young queer artists. Watching him mentor kids at the opening filled me with pride. The betrayal had nearly destroyed us, but it had also revealed strengths we didn't know we possessed. My internal crisis about identity had evolved into clarity. I was a gay man worthy of love, not despite my past, but because of how I had grown through it. Yet doubts lingered in quiet moments. Could trust ever be whole again, or would shadows always remain? Roman sensed them and suggested a couple's retreat. We spent a week in the mountains talking with other pairs facing similar struggles. Hearing stories of betrayal and redemption from other gay men normalized my pain. One couple had survived worse and emerged stronger. Their example gave me hope. On the last night, Roman slipped a simple ring onto my finger, not a proposal but a promise. This time, no grand gestures, just us choosing daily. I accepted it, feeling the weight of the past but also the lightness of possibility. Months later, the city bloomed with spring, and so did we. The apartment we once shared now felt like a new beginning. Roman had moved back in slowly, piece by piece, until it simply made sense. We kept the mural on the wall but added my own touches, photographs of our trips and family gatherings. Therapy continued, but less frequently, now a tool rather than a lifeline. My parents visited for a long weekend, mom hugging Roman tightly, dad shaking his hand with real warmth. The wedding my sister had planned came and went, with us dancing together under string lights, no longer hiding. The journey had cost us both, but the man I had become was wiser, steadier. Roman's art evolved too, incorporating themes of forgiveness and resilience. His new series, titled Trust Lines, featured intertwined paths that broke and rejoined stronger. At his latest opening, I stood beside him fielding questions from reporters. One asked how we had survived the rough patch. I glanced at Roman, then answered honestly. We stopped pretending perfection and started building truth. The betrayal had been the shock that forced us to grow. It taught me that love between two men isn't about never falling but about rising together every time. Work stabilized too. I led a new campaign celebrating diversity and for the first time included my own story in subtle ways. Colleagues respected the change. Jake remained my rock, celebrating milestones with beers and bad jokes. The friendships I had neglected during the crisis deepened, proving that support came from many directions. Internally, the crisis of identity had resolved into pride. I no longer questioned if being gay invited betrayal. I knew it invited real connection when built on honesty. One quiet evening on our balcony overlooking the Brooklyn lights, Roman turned to me. "Lincoln, do you still believe in us?" I thought about the man who had kissed another, the pain, the long road back. Then I looked at the man beside me, the one who had fought for redemption. "I do," I said. "Not because it's easy, but because we've earned it." He smiled, pulling me close, the embrace familiar yet renewed. The city hummed below, full of stories like ours, messy, beautiful, resilient. Through every high and low, the betrayal had been the catalyst for something greater. We had faced family, society, and our own demons, emerging not unbroken but unbreakable. The promises Roman once made so lightly now carried the weight of lived experience. And my trust, once shattered, had reformed stronger because I had learned to trust myself first. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time I faced it without fear. True or false? Once a betrayal shatters trust between two men in love, it can never be rebuilt stronger than before.